I think we're going to be back here. How long is it to walk here? Is it quite a long walk?
No, like 15 minutes.
And then...
Well, this is the sort of thing I wanted to open.
Welcome to our 2017 Tour of Flanders preview show from the Strawberry Thief Belgian bar in Bristol. Now we're going to be previewing and having a closer look at the iconic course, going through the favourites in both the men's and the women's races, and trying to predict what may happen out on the course, which I know is a little bit of a risk.
Yeah. Now, there are a few key changes to this year's race. The 101st edition, in fact, of the Tour of Flanders. So we thought we would grab a Belgian beer and have a closer look. I've gone for a Zot. What have you gone for, Matt?
I've gone for a Troubadour site.
Nice. We'll wait for Lloydie's quack to kick in, warm him up, and then hopefully we'll start talking. You ready, Dan?
He's savouring that.
He can talk now. Good stuff.
Right, route-wise then, what is in store at the races this coming Sunday? Well, on the men's side, it's slightly longer than last year at 259.5 kilometres, and they've got a brand new start in the historical city port of Antwerp, but the usual finish in Oudenaarde. In between, they're going to be facing 18 of the famous hellingen, the short, steep and often cobbled climbs which litter the race. Now, the first of which comes after 115 relatively flat kilometres.
Relatively flat, but different to normal, because that different start city means we have a bit of a change, including visiting the town of Zugge, which is actually the hometown of Olympic champion and, let's face it, star of 2017, Greg van Avermaet. After Zugge, there'll be a couple of cobbled sections before the first of the climbs. It's the Oude Quermont, and that'll be the first of 3 times up that absolute beast.
Yeah, well then the hellingen come really thick and fast, and there's a few new ones, including the Coquetier and the Wolfenberg, before several flat cobble sections lead to another triptych of climbs, the Lieberg, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
the Lieberg, the Bergen and the Ten Bosch, thank you.
And after 165 leg-sapping kilometres, they will reach the Muur van Gelaardsbergen, which is one of the most iconic climbs in Flanders, but hasn't been in the race for around about 6 years. It's 1.1 kilometres long, and the 20% gradients lead up to the chapel at the top. However, with 95 k's still to go this time from that point onwards, it's unlikely to be quite as pivotal as it was in the race when it featured a few years ago.
No. To be fair, we actually made our own little pilgrimage over there, didn't we? Just a couple of weeks ago.
2-man pilgrimage, it was good fun, wasn't it?
It was.
Well, it's kind of got the air of reverence, isn't it? It's going to be amazing. The atmosphere's going to be nuts.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely
sure cycling fans will be flocking there, even though it's 95 k's to go.
A sort of cycling pilgrimage.
Then next on the menu is the Pottelberg before the final 75 kilometres, which is actually the same as it was in 2016 for what is left of the race at that point, including the now infamous double header of the Oude Quermont Paterberg, which the guys will actually go up twice, so a double header if you like. Then the final ascent of the Paterberg is the last possible opportunity for any rider to rip the race apart before the final relatively benign 13.2 kilometre run into the finish in Oudenaarde.
It was hard enough just once at the Paterberg, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
The women's race, now in its 14th year, is 153.3 kilometres long, making it longer than last year, but arguably more significantly features 12 hellingen, 2 more climbs than last year. Now they got the Muur de Gelaardsbergen with 60 kilometres to go, and then, like the men, they have that horrible duo knockout punch of the Oude Quermont and Paterberg before the run into the line in Oudenaarde.
It's not just the ability to go hard and deep after nearly 6 hours and 260 kilometres of racing that separates the Tour of Flanders winners from the also-rans, although clearly that does help. But it's also the ability to keep your head, to strategise, and all the while have your body screaming with pain. And then of course you need the physiology that allows you to cope with soaking up the battering that is given out by those short, brutally steep and tough hellingen.
Yeah, if you'd like to go out and try doing 18 reps of 1 to 2 minutes flat out on climbs, it's going to give you some idea as to what the riders will face on the day. In fact, you two went out there recently, didn't you? You did 15 of those climbs in the space of 70 Ks, was it? As
Something
opposed
like that,
to
yeah.
the 6 hours and 40 Ks per hour average that the
Well,
pros will be
the
doing.
70k I think makes it harder, doesn't it?
It was a more condensed version.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
that
an
did big ring the
undiluted-
Koppenberg as well.
Regardless, it did give you an idea as to how they can be underestimated, these small climbs. They might not be mountains, but they really take it out of your legs. And it's not just the climbs either, it's also the accelerations that you have to do in between the climbs to ensure that you're at the front at the right time.
Yeah, positioning at these most critical points of the race is absolutely crucial. So team leaders will require their teammates or to rely on their teammates to drop them off in good position on those sorts of climbs. They can follow the key moves in the race. Importantly, not get caught behind the numerous crashes that always occur, and also save energy by not fighting for position in the wind and then having to chase to get back in contact.
Yeah, because the roads are also incredibly narrow once they get to the small climbs and lanes, and that means that if you want to be definitively in with a shout of winning the race, you generally need to be inside the top 20, at least to make it easy for yourself. And that is easier said than done when you've got an initial field of 200 riders. Again, when all of the sports directors in the team cars behind are shouting orders on the radio to the riders, all telling them to be at the front. Of course, not all people can be in the first 20 out of 200 riders. And this basically means a high-speed stress fest to 18 imaginary finish lines before the actual finish line that comes in Oudenaarde.
It's stressful enough watching it on telly, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great watching it on telly.
I'm
great
looking forward to it.
Greg van Avermaet should really start as favourite. The Olympic champion has had a stellar start to his 2017, including netting a rare Belgian triple. Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, followed by E3 Harelbeke, and then the very recent Ghent Wevelgem. However, he actually doesn't have a monument in his palmares as yet. He crashed out agonisingly from last year's Tour of Flanders, although crying in pain out of disappointment rather than physical pain. But with this year's race going through his hometown, could it be the year for him?
And whilst Greg should be favourite when you look at form, the bookies' favourite is still going to be a certain Peter Sagan. The only cobbled race he's won so far this year is Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. He fell short at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, he missed out at Milan-San Remo and also at Ghent-Wevelgem. They did finish on the podium at all 3 of those races. The thing for Sagan though is that he does have a target on his back, in the form of the rainbow band, but also by virtue of the fact that his name is Peter Sagan. Will that count against him? Possibly.
Now, the 2015 winner Alexander Kristoff hasn't had the best cobble campaign so far in 2017, although bad luck did play its part in Ghent-Wevelgem. Now, the Tour of Flanders, of course, is one of his main objectives for the year, so he's going to hope for a lot more luck this time around.
Yeah, and he came fourth at San Remo, didn't he?
He did.
Best of the rest
He's going all
behind
right.
the leading 3.
Maybe he's saving himself. He's just under the radar a bit. We'll see.
Flanders will be Tom Boonen's penultimate monument of what is an illustrious career in cycling. He is genuinely one of the true legends of the sport. Could he win a 4th Tour of Flanders? If he does, he will be crowned King of Belgium, although his mind might be more on Paris-Roubaix. And if it is, then pretty much all of his Quick-Step Floors teammates will be waiting in the wings. Stybar, Trentin, Terpstra, Lampaert, and perhaps most notably, Philippe Gilbert, who, although he's been concentrating more on the Ardennes Classics in recent years, has been absolutely on fire on the cobbles.
He certainly has. Well, let's look to John Degenkolb. He really wants to win Tour of Flanders, of course. He could add that to 2 other monuments he won a couple of years back, Paris-Roubaix and Milan-San Remo. And he'll have a custom shiny new Trek to ride on as well, adding to the morale he'll have for that race. Whilst if we look at Team Sky, we have Luke Rowe and Ian Starland, who'll be the joint leaders in that race. And I think Luke Rowe is definitely one to look at. He's had a real steady trajectory in relation to his form in the Classics over the last few years. And his 5th place in Flanders last year shows he can really hang with the best. Whilst if you look at Stannard, he's forgone his stage racing that he normally does at this time of the year to focus purely on training for the Classics. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it will be. And finally, on the men's side of things, we have Sepp van Mark. He is now back with Jonathan Wouters at the Cannondale Drapac squad. He's been knocking on the door of the cobbled monuments for a few years now. He's had 2 second places at the Tour of Flanders, a runner-up place into Fabien Cancellara at Paris-Roubaix. And he was also third at the start of this year on Het Nieuwsblad behind Van Avermaet and Peter Sagan. However, he hasn't looked quite so good of late. In fact, he didn't even start Game Wevelgem because he was ill.
I can't get past with Sepp Van Aert that image of him on the Paterberg last year, cracking as Peter Sagan.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for me, he's always going to be second tier favourite because of that image. I just can't get it out of my mind.
I think it's almost a shame for riders of the calibre of Sepp Van Aert. Let's not deny he is a class act.
Absolutely.
But when you're a pro rider in the era of Cancellara, of Bonen, Sagan, and even Greg Van Avermaet, it's so hard to break through to that top tier, isn't it?
But at the same time, Greg Van Avermaet was in exactly the same situation as Van Aert just a couple of years ago. He's now 31, Greg Van Avermaet. He's coming into his prime. He is winning these big races. He's not yet won a monument, but you can imagine he's 31 years old. Oh, Van Mark's about 28, 29, I imagine. I haven't looked it up.
Time on his side then.
Yeah.
That was an estimate, 28 till now. We'll look it up later.
2016 winner Lizzie Deignan leads an incredibly strong Boels Dolmans team, more than ably backed up by World Road Race champion Amelie Dideriksen. But Lizzie Deignan herself actually hasn't shown too much of her previous form this season, and in fact, she actually pulled out of Ghent Wevelgem through illness.
Well, meanwhile, Lotta Lepistö, the winner of Ghent Wevelgem, is absolutely flying. The Finnish champion not only took out Ghent Wevelgem, she took out Ronde Van Vlaanderen in the last 5 days. And although she hasn't had the best record in the Tour of Flanders, with the kind of form she's showing at the moment, and a Cervelo Biglia squad that's really behind her, she could be one to watch for sure.
The Wattage bazooka in her back pocket probably helped her as well.
Yeah.
Didn't mention that, yeah.
We should also mention the winner from a couple of years ago. That is Elisa Longo Borghini. She won the Strada Bianca just a few weeks ago. And when she won this race 2 years ago, second place was Jolien D'Or, who was a teammate at the time, and she's still a teammate now at Wiggle High Five, so they will form a formidable duo. And we should also mention Team Sunweb, probably led by Lucinda Brand here. She had a cracking cyclocross season and won Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, and she'll be certainly one of the favourites here at the Tour of Flanders.
Yeah. The Canyon-SRAM team have a roster stacked with talent. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Tiffany Cromwell and Alina Amialuzic. And let's also not discount the might of the WM3 Energy team with the incredible Marianne Vos and also the young talent of her teammate Katarzyna Niewiadoma.
Yeah, and there are a whole host of others that we could throw into the mix as well. So basically what we are saying is that the women's race is incredibly open this year. Boels Dolmans haven't shown the same dominance that they did in 2016, so it's well worth watching that race, and hopefully we're going to get some decent live pictures.
Okay, chaps, it's now time for the Gcn Kiss of Death. Your predictions, please, for both the men's and the women's races. Lovely job, thank you very much.
Jolien D'Or, Luke Durbridge.
Lotta Lepistö, Greg Van Avermaet.
Lucinda Brand and Peter Sagan.
Well, Peter Sagan, that's a surprise, Matt.
Well, I was right last year, note that, and I've just got a funny feeling this year. He's as strong as ever. Yes, there's going to be a few challenges. He's a marked man, but I think if it's all together easy on the Paterberg, I think he's still the strongest rider out there and has the ability to solo to the finish. I think it's going to be back-to-back wins, not only in the World Championships, but in the Tour of Flanders as well. Peter Sagan is my man.
This is Greg Van Avermaet's year.
No,
We've seen it already.
He can't
this
do
year.
4 in a
He's
row.
won 3 cobbled semi-classics at least. No. And last year he crashed out, otherwise he probably would have beaten Sagan. This year he's going to win the Tour of Flanders, his first monument.
Can you honestly say, hand on heart, that if Van Avermaet and Sagan had a gutter each on the Paterberg after 250 kilometres, that Van Avermaet is going to drop Sagan?
No, I won't say going to drop him. There's no gutters involved in the Paterberg because in the Tour of Flanders there's barriers all the way up. They've got to ride on the cobbles. But more often than not, Greg Van Avermaet has beaten Peter Sagan in the sprint at the finish because Sagan always just does too much.
Yeah,
I think he'll be on his own again this time, though.
Yeah,
anyway,
well, I've gone for Durbridge. I appreciate.
Oh, an outsider.
He is an outsider.
Good outsider.
Yeah, you know, like can't always go for the red hot favourites. But yeah, he's not far off a red hot favourite himself now, is he? He's clearly really stepped it up a level this year. He's flying.
And what he could do is benefit from a potential stalemate between some of the favourites as well. He's proved over the distance that he can mix it on the cobbles. He's in the form of his life.
Strong team
and he's going
as
to
well.
be buoyed by confidence. Yeah, so good
because they've got Jens Kokelera, who was second at Ghent Wevelgem, so maybe they'll be looking at him a little bit more. Right, before you all go on with the women's, I want to get my favourite in first. I'm going for Lotta Lepistö of Cervelo Biglia.
Yeah.
Not the Cervelo fellow test team, but I'm going for her because it's a team that's fairly close to my old team. But she's been on fantastic form, as we've already mentioned, and I think she's going to carry that through to the Tour of Flanders.
Well, I'm going for Lucinda Brand because she is just so versatile. She's up there in Strade Bianche, nearly won Strade Bianche, in fact finished 4th. She was 3rd, I think, in the Ronde Van Vlaanderen as well. Not so good in Gent-Wevelgem, but of course took out Het Nieuwsblad earlier in the year. So she packs a punch, she can sprint well, and she can hang on the climbs. That's what she's
been a long year though. She's done cyclocross as well. Lepistö is a bit fresh.
Cyclocross is only going to help on the cobbles.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I've gone for Jolien D'Or. She's got prior form in this race, and she's also got cracking form this year as well, hasn't she? She only narrowly missed out at Gent-Wevelgem. She's on home roads. I think she can do it.
Yeah. So there are 6 riders we've given the kiss of death to for the 2017
sorry, everyone.
Tour of
Really
Flanders.
sorry.
I'm so sorry we put you guys.
Expect to see 2 completely different winners come this Sunday, the 2nd of April. That's it for this year's Tour of Flanders preview, or the Ronde Van Vlaanderen preview here at GCN. If you are yet to subscribe to the channel, you can do so by clicking on the globe.
Yeah, and if you're after some more Flanders content, and I imagine you would be, because let's face it, it's pretty exciting right now, why not click just up there for a lesson from the master, the Lion of Flanders himself, how to ride cobble climbs with Johan Museeuw.
And there's another video, isn't there, to choose, which is...
Oh, it's the iconic climb of the Koppenberg, isn't it? It's in the other corner just up here.